Meet David, a very successful businessman with a great wife and 3 wonderful children. David is worried about how he is going to provide for his own financial future and his family's, because the economic climate is so uncertain. When David reads the newspapers, he reads about the pension crisis, share values dropping, the Eurozone breaking up, and the euro becoming obsolete. David's father Edward was also a successful businessman, and his mother, Anna, worked as a civil servant for the local council, but they're both retired now. David is very concerned because although both his mother and father took professional advice and paid into different pension schemes, they are struggling to maintain their lifestyle. And it's not their fault because they followed the advice of the professionals. David remembers when the salesman from the pension company used to visit his father every year. The salesman always asked Edward if his earnings had increased, and then he advised him that he should pay extra into his pension fund. David remembers the salesman promising Edward a 10% annual return, which would provide both Edward and Anna with a comfortable monthly income during their retirement. But David now knows that in fact the pension company has gambled with Edward's money, and he will not get a 10% return. The monthly income promised for Edward's retirement is 1/10 or less than what Edward expected, as the pension pot is too small and everyone is living longer. And, to David's amazement, his father does not even have any comeback. David now feels that his father would have got a better guarantee from Del Boy down at Peckham Market. David does not want to give all his hard-earned cash to a pension company in the hope of getting it back in 25 years' time with an unknown return. David knows that in the 1980s everyone put their money into one big pot, and the pension companies gambled on a large percentage of pensioners dying very early into their retirement. But nowadays everyone is living longer, and so the pension pot has to support more people than was ever anticipated. People living until they are 100 or more is likely to become the norm. David's uncle James was not as successful a businessman as his father, but instead of investing all his money in a pension fund, James bought some rental properties and now lives off the rent paid to him by his tenants. James recently sold a property because he wanted to take his wife and family on a world tour. Unlike Edward, whose money is held in a collective pension pool, which can be diluted without his knowledge or permission, James holds his assets in a family trust which remains under his control. Comparing his father Edward and his uncle James, David believes that he should invest his money in property. But which property? Where? And how will he find tenants? Who will maintain it? Who will collect the rent? Then David meets his best friend Will in the pub, and Will tells him that he owns some rental properties which he purchased through a company called Realistic Property Investment. David is astonished because he knows Will does not know anything about property and spends a lot of time overseas. Will explains to David that Realistic Property Investment specialises in supplying property which already has a paying tenant and occupation, is located in an area of strong rental demand, is in good decorative repair and well maintained. Realistic Property Investment continues to manage the properties on his behalf, and so Will just sits back and watches the rent appear in his bank account. David thinks that's a great idea, but he's read in the newspapers that the property market is depressed at the moment, so maybe he should wait and see what happens. Will says, "I thought that as well until my advisor showed me the figures. I bought my first house through Realistic Property Investment for £150,000. I paid £60,000 deposit and took a mortgage for £90,000. The house had a tenant paying monthly rent. Over 25 years, taking into account the rate of inflation, I will receive more than £450,000 in rent. That's a 600% return on my deposit of £60,000. So even if the value of my house never goes up, I will have received enough income to pay off my mortgage and in later years receive a monthly income. But since the Nationwide Building Society began monitoring house prices in 1973, the average house price has risen by 9% per annum, meaning that between 1975 and 2007, the average house price increased by 1,672%. This is despite the fact that between 1989 and 1993, the last recession, house prices actually dropped in value by 20%. So assuming based on historical figures, the capital value of property rises by 1,200% over the next 25 years, not only has your mortgage been paid off from the rental income received, you have also received a substantial rental income, and the capital value of the house may have increased substantially as well. No wonder they say safe as houses. Will tells David that the credit crunch has actually created more opportunities for savvy investors to purchase property, while prices are lower than normal, and this reminds David that his uncle bought several houses at the beginning of the 90s when his father said his uncle should invest his money in a pension fund. David wants to keep control over his investments, and he does not want to risk placing his money in a pension fund with an unknown return. So Will introduces him to his advisor, and David buys 5 properties, safe in the knowledge that they are fully managed on his behalf, and as the years go by, David buys more properties and adds them to his portfolio, which is maintained in a tax-efficient family trust. David is now more confident about his financial future, secure in the knowledge that his son will not have to support him during his retirement in the way that David now has to support his father. Let Realistic Property Investment Limited assist you in providing for your financial future.